Each story begins with something small, a sound, a shadow, a knock on the glass. But what follows will leave you questioning what's really out there and what might be watching you when you're alone. If you are new to this channel and enjoy scary true stories like these, please help this channel grow by subscribing and turning on notifications. Every subscription helps us bring you more real horror stories that keep you up at night. Don't just listen, be part of the darkness. Thank you for your support. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, in a part of Oregon that's as quiet and remote as it gets. The town itself wasn't much, just a handful of stores, some scattered neighborhoods, and endless stretches of woods. My family had always been into real estate, flipping homes and restoring old properties, and when I turned 24, I decided to take a leap and try my hand at it too. I'd saved up enough working construction with my dad and figured it was time. That's how I ended up with the house. It was listed as a fixer-upper on the outskirts of town, well outside city limits, sitting on a few acres of land bordered by dense forest. The photos showed a dilapidated farmhouse, peeling white paint, rotting porch, overgrown yard, but something about it drew me in. The price was absurdly low. I asked the agent why, and he said it had sat empty for years and needed extensive work. He never mentioned anything else. I bought it without even stepping inside. The first time I pulled up the long gravel driveway, it felt like the trees were swallowing me whole. The house didn't sit on a hill or at the end of an open field. It was surrounded on all sides by forest, like it had been dropped in the middle of nowhere. There were no nearby neighbors, no passing cars, no power lines, just trees and silence. At first I chalked it up to isolation. I'm not the jumpy type. I like my solitude. But something about that property never felt right. Not in the way people exaggerate to sell ghost stories. I'm talking about a low, steady pressure that hung in the air, like being watched. The first week was uneventful. I focused on cleaning the place out, tearing up old carpet, airing out mildew. The smell inside the house was unbearable at first, a mix of rot, damp wood, and something metallic, like rust or blood. But I told myself it was just age and neglect. I wore a respirator and opened every window. The weirdness started on the 9th night. I was sleeping in a cot in the living room, surrounded by tools and extension cords. No furniture, just the basics. I'd brought a propane heater since the electricity wasn't hooked up yet. I woke up around 2 or 3 a.m., heart pounding. I didn't know why at first. The air was freezing. The heater had gone out. But what really got me was the silence. When you're that far out in the woods, silence isn't normal. You hear animals, wind, branches cracking, but this was dead silence, not even insects. Then I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate. One step, then another, then nothing. I stared up at the ceiling. The second floor was unfinished, full of exposed beams and dust. I hadn't even gone up there since buying the place. Figured there were raccoons or squirrels nesting, maybe even a larger animal. I grabbed my flashlight and a crowbar and made my way upstairs, every step on the old staircase groaning like it might collapse. The second floor was pitch black. My flashlight cut across the empty space. No furniture, no boxes, just wide planks, beams and dust hanging in the air. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. I checked every corner. Nothing. I told myself it had to be in my head. Or maybe the heater going out woke me up, and I imagined the footsteps. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, same slow steps. I didn't go up that time. I just lay there, heart racing, listening. The steps stopped after 3 or 4, like someone taking a few paces and freezing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Over the next few days, I tried to ignore it, kept working during daylight hours, repairing drywall, replacing old pipes, sealing windows. I even played music from my phone to drown out the quiet. But the sense of being watched never went away. Then the scratching started. It wasn't loud, just light, like fingernails on wood. It came from inside the walls, usually in the early morning hours, around 3 or 4 a.m. I assumed rats or mice at first, so I bought traps, sealed gaps, even put out poison. Nothing worked. The scratching continued, and it started moving. One night, it'd be by the front wall, the next near the kitchen, then by the fireplace. I mentioned it to my dad. He offered to drive out and help for a few days. I said sure, I needed the company. He arrived on a Thursday. The moment he stepped inside, he wrinkled his nose and said, "This place feels off." He wasn't a superstitious man, Vietnam vet, built like a tank, but that first night, he didn't sleep. I found him in the kitchen around 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling. "You heard it too?" I asked. He nodded. "Someone was walking around up there, real slow." I told him I'd checked. No footprints, no signs of entry. He didn't respond. That day, we opened the attic access. It was cramped and dark. We climbed up together, flashlight beams cutting through cobwebs. There was nothing up there, just old insulation and dust. But in the far corner, we found something that made my skin crawl. A small wooden box, old hand-carved, latched shut. We brought it down and opened it on the porch. Inside was a bundle of what looked like dried herbs, feathers, bones, and a small doll, handmade. Its head was wrapped in twine, no face, just a smear of red where the mouth would be. My dad didn't say anything. He just closed the box, walked to the fire pit, and burned the whole thing. That night was the worst yet. Around midnight, the heater shut off again. Then came the silence, and then the footsteps. But this time, they came down the stairs, slow, deliberate, step by step. I sat up, gripping the crowbar I kept next to me. My dad came out of the kitchen, holding his pistol. We waited. The steps stopped at the base of the stairs. We turned on every flashlight we had, and searched the entire house. Nothing, no one. The front door was still bolted, windows sealed, no sign of forced entry. But in the dust near the base of the stairs, fresh footprints, bare feet, small, like a child's. We left that night, packed up our tools, locked the place, and drove to a motel in town. My dad said we were done. "You need to sell that house," he told me. "Some places don't want to be fixed." I didn't listen. I'd put too much money into it already. After a few days, I went back alone. That first night back, I heard nothing. No footsteps, no scratching, just wind and trees. I thought maybe burning that box worked. Maybe it had been some kind of curse or totem. Then I found the message. It was written on the bathroom mirror in the morning. In the condensation from the shower, 3 words: "You brought her." I hadn't showered that morning, hadn't used hot water at all. I stared at it for a long time. Then I wiped it clean. The air in the house felt heavier that day, like something was waiting, watching. I tried to work, replacing a broken step on the porch, but my hammer kept slipping. My hand shook. I felt cold even in the sun. That night, I didn't sleep. I heard whispers, not words I could make out, just soft, constant murmurs, like someone talking just outside the room. Every time I got up to check, they stopped. I started dreaming of a girl, always the same, pale skin, dark hair, eyes like glass. She stood in the forest, just beyond the tree line, staring at the house. Sometimes she was inside, watching me from the hallway. One morning, I found muddy footprints across the living room, small, bare, leading from the back door to the stairs. The door was locked, no sign of forced entry. I bleached the floors and checked the security camera I'd set up by the back porch. The feed was corrupted, static, except for one frame. A girl, just for a split second, pale, standing at the edge of the forest, looking straight at the camera. I sold the house 3 weeks later. Didn't care about the money I lost. Didn't go back to get my tools, I just left. Sometimes I drive past the turnoff. The house still sits there, empty, windows dark, overgrown yard. I don't know if anyone else has moved in since, but once, about a year later, I got a letter. No return address, just a piece of paper, handwritten. She's still there. She wants you to come back. I burned it, like we burned the box. But some nights, I wake up at exactly 3 a.m. heart racing, listening, and sometimes, I still hear the footsteps. I grew up in a pretty quiet part of upstate New York. We weren't far from the mountains, surrounded by thick forests and old dirt roads, the kind of place where people don't lock their doors at night because everyone knows everyone. My dad was a park ranger, and my mom worked at the library. Our house sat on about 10 acres of woods, tucked back behind a long gravel driveway. It was peaceful, or at least it used to be. It started about 3 years ago, in late September. I remember because the leaves had just started to turn, and the nights were getting colder. I was visiting home after moving out a few months prior. I had graduated college and gotten a job downstate, but I missed the quiet, so I took a few days off and came back for a long weekend. My parents were thrilled to have me home, and I thought I'd spend most of the weekend hiking and relaxing. The first night was uneventful, but I woke up early the next morning to let our dog Rusty out. He was a golden retriever, old and mostly blind, but still had a strong bark on him. When I opened the back door, he froze on the porch, nose in the air. Then he growled, low, steady, unlike anything I'd heard from him before. I looked out toward the tree line, but didn't see anything. I figured maybe it was a deer or a fox. Later that day, I went for a walk in the woods, following one of the old trails my dad had cleared years ago. About a mile in, I saw something strange. A tree had been marked, not just scratched by an animal. This was deliberate. There were deep gouges in the bark, forming a shape, a spiral, with a crude X through it. At first I thought maybe it was some hunter marking his spot, but it looked too ritualistic. I took a photo of it on my phone and kept walking, brushing it off. When I showed my dad the photo that evening, he went quiet, his face tightened, and he asked where I saw it. I told him, and he nodded slowly. Then he told me not to go back there. He didn't elaborate, just said it was probably someone screwing around, but that people did stupid things in the woods sometimes. Still, I could tell he was shaken. That night, I heard something outside my window. My room faced the backyard, and my window was cracked open to let in the cool air. I heard twigs snapping, leaves rustling, slow, steady movement. I sat up, listening. Rusty started barking downstairs, frantic. I got up and went to the window, but saw nothing. The motion light hadn't come on, which was odd, because even a raccoon could trigger it. The next morning, I went out with my dad to check the perimeter. Near the back edge of our property, he found something that made him curse under his breath. A deer, or what was left of it, had been strung up between two trees, not in a hunter's way. Its stomach had been slit open, and its front legs were bound with rope. There were symbols drawn in the dirt nearby, like the one I'd seen on the tree. My dad called the sheriff. A deputy came out, took some photos, and told us he'd file a report, but admitted they probably wouldn't find anything. He guessed it was some teenagers playing at being Satanists, but he looked just as unsettled as we were. That night, my mom asked if we could keep the windows shut. She said she'd heard footsteps outside the house around midnight. My dad dismissed it, said it was probably an animal, but I could tell he didn't believe that. The next day, I decided to go for a drive, just to get out and clear my head. About halfway down the long gravel driveway, I noticed something in the ditch, a dead bird, then another. I stopped the car and got out. There were about 5 of them, laid out in a perfect line, spaced evenly, not torn up, just dead, no visible wounds. It didn't make any sense. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing things, branches cracking, faint whispers, or maybe just the wind. But then around 3 or 4 in the morning, Rusty started going ballistic, barking and howling like he was ready to tear the door down. My dad and I ran downstairs, and when we opened the front door, we saw it. Someone had left something on our porch. It was a bundle of sticks, tied together with twine, shaped like a crude human figure. There was something wrapped in the center, what looked like animal fur. My dad didn't even touch it. He told me to grab Rusty and go back inside. He burned the thing out back. The next day, we found another marked tree, this time closer to the house. Same spiral, same X. My dad started sleeping with his rifle. He said he hadn't seen anything like this in all his years as a ranger. He didn't think it was just teenagers anymore. 2 nights later, it escalated. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard what sounded like whispering outside my window, faint, almost melodic. I sat up, heart pounding. It sounded like chanting. I grabbed my phone and hit record, crawling slowly to the window. I couldn't see anything through the glass, but the motion light flicked on, and I saw movement, just the edge of something. A person, or maybe several, in dark clothing, moving back into the woods. The next morning, we found footprints all around the house, bare feet, adult-sized, no shoes. They circled the building, stopped at every window. That afternoon, my dad called in a favor with a friend from a neighboring county, a retired detective, who had helped with some search and rescue cases in the past. He came out, listened to what we told him, and went out to investigate. When he came back, he looked pale. He said he found more symbols, deeper in the woods, and what looked like a clearing being used for something, burnt out candles, bones, and more of those stick figures. He suggested we leave for a while, let things cool off. So we did. We packed up that night, and stayed at a motel a few towns over. When we came back 2 days later, the woods were quiet. No new symbols, no dead animals, no signs of anything. We didn't talk about it much after that. My parents installed a security system, got motion sensors, and even put up a few trail cams, but nothing else ever happened. It was like whoever, or whatever had been there, knew we left, and didn't care to return. I still visit, but I never walk the woods alone anymore. And even now, years later, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night, with the memory of that chanting in my ears. And every now and then, someone on a hiking trail, or online forum, will post a picture of a tree marked with a spiral, and an X. I don't know who's doing it, or why. But I know this, they're still out there, and they watch first. They always watch before they get close. I've never told this story to anyone, not in full anyway. I've hinted at pieces of it to close friends over drinks, always with a nervous laugh, like it wasn't as serious as it was. But the truth is, this changed me. I haven't lived the same since, and I still check every window, every lock, every night, without fail. Back in 2016, I was living alone for the first time. I just moved into a modest 1-bedroom house in a quiet rural town in Northern California. It wasn't completely isolated. There were neighbors on both sides, but the houses were spaced far apart, and the woods loomed thick and dark behind my backyard fence. I thought it was peaceful, serene, a great place to focus on my work. I worked as a freelance editor and writer. That meant I spent long hours at home, often well into the night, sitting at my desk near a large sliding glass door that faced the backyard. During the day, I loved how the sunlight poured in, and the view of the pines made it easy to zone out when I needed a break. At night, though, the glass turned into a black mirror. You couldn't see out, but anyone, or anything out there could see in perfectly. I should have installed curtains. That thought occurred to me more than once, but I didn't, not until it was too late. The first incident was small. It was a little after midnight, and I was still at my desk, revising some client copy. I had a lamp on behind me, casting a soft glow across the room. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Not loud, not hurried, just tap, tap. I froze. The sound came from the sliding glass door. At first, I thought maybe it was the wind knocking a branch against the glass, but the trees weren't that close, and the night was still. No breeze, no animals rustling around. I stared at the door, trying to see through the reflection, but I couldn't make anything out. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a raccoon. I ignored it and went back to work. But then it happened again. Tap, tap, same sound, same rhythm. This time, I turned off the lamp, thinking I might be able to see outside if I got rid of the light behind me. As the darkness settled around me, I stepped closer to the glass, peering out. My eyes adjusted slowly, but all I saw was the dim outline of my backyard, the grass, the faint shape of the fence, the forest beyond. No one was there. Still, it left me shaken enough that I went around the house, double-checking that all the doors and windows were locked. They were. I left the hallway light on that night, and I didn't sleep much. A few nights passed with nothing strange happening. I tried to chalk it up to nerves or an animal. Maybe I was just getting used to the quiet of living alone. But then, a week later, I noticed something that chilled me more than the tapping. There were footprints, bare footprints, in the morning dew on my deck, right outside the sliding glass door. Not boot prints, not even sock prints, just long, narrow, pale feet. The prints led up to the door, and then nothing. No prints going back the other way, as if someone had walked up to my house, stood there, and vanished. I took a photo of the prints, thinking maybe I'd show someone, but I never did. I didn't want to seem paranoid. Instead, I just bought some motion sensor lights and installed them above the back door and the front porch. I figured if someone was creeping around, I'd catch them in the act. For a while the lights gave me some peace of mind, until one night, about 2 weeks later, when they went off. I was in bed, half asleep, when I saw the back sensor light flare through my bedroom blinds. I shot up, heart racing, and grabbed the baseball bat I kept under my bed. I crept through the hallway and peeked into the kitchen, then towards the sliding door. The light was still on, illuminating the backyard in a cold, artificial glow. But again, I couldn't see anyone. I stayed up the rest of the night, bat in hand, jumping at every creak and groan of the house settling. The next day, I installed a cheap security camera that synced to an app on my phone. It only recorded in 15-second bursts when motion was detected, but I figured it was better than nothing. That night, I sat at my desk again, working, with the camera on, and recording. Around 1:30 a.m., I got the motion alert. I froze, stared at my phone, then opened the video. I wish I hadn't. In the grainy black and white footage, I saw someone, tall, thin, shirtless, walk into the frame from the edge of the woods. He didn't move like a drunk or a drifter. His steps were slow, controlled, intentional. He walked straight to the sliding glass door, and just stood there, watching. His face was obscured in the footage, but I could make out his mouth. He was smiling, not like he was happy. It was a wide, too big grin that didn't move, just frozen there, like it had been carved into his face. Then the footage ended. I didn't go near the door. I called the sheriff's department. They sent a patrol car, but by the time the deputy arrived, there was no one around. I showed him the footage. He didn't say much, just told me to keep my doors locked, and to call again if anything else happened. I asked if maybe it was a prank, some local messing with me. He said maybe, but his tone didn't sound convinced. I didn't sleep for days after that. I moved a heavy bookcase in front of the sliding glass door. I put up blackout curtains in every window. I even started keeping my phone recording audio through the night, just in case. That's how I caught what happened next. About 4 nights after the video, I was finally trying to sleep. I had my phone face down on the nightstand, recording audio, the way I'd done the last few nights. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly, with no idea why. The house was quiet, too quiet. I didn't hear anything then, but the next morning, I played the audio back. For a while it was just ambient noise, me breathing, tossing and turning a bit. Then, at around the 3-hour mark, I heard something that turned my blood cold. It was whispering, soft, almost inaudible, but definitely there. A voice, male, repeating something over and over again. I listened to the clip a dozen times before I could understand what he was saying. Let me in, let me in, let me in. Over and over, maybe 30 times. Then, nothing, just silence again. I called the sheriff's department again, and played them the audio. They told me to come in and file a report, which I did, but I got the sense they didn't know what to do with it. There wasn't enough evidence of a crime, they said. I started crashing at a friend's place, a couple nights a week. I was exhausted, terrified, and on edge constantly. I was looking for new places to live, but finding somewhere affordable, safe, and available wasn't easy. Then came the final night. I'd come back to the house after a few days away, to grab some clothes and important documents. It was about 5 p.m., still daylight. I parked in the driveway, grabbed a laundry basket of things from the back seat, and went up to the front door. The door was unlocked. I know I locked it. I always locked it. My heart dropped, and I backed away immediately. I didn't go in. I called the sheriff again, reported a possible break-in. They showed up, cleared the house, and found nothing. But when I walked through afterward, something felt wrong. It was the smell, something faint, but sharp, like sweat, and something else, rotting meat. The couch cushions were slightly disturbed. A glass I hadn't used was sitting in the sink, and in the bedroom, under the bed, I found something I will never forget. A piece of notebook paper, no writing, just a crude drawing, done in what looked like charcoal or ash. It was a sketch of a face, wide mouth, huge eyes, stick-thin neck, grinning. Below it in childlike handwriting, "Let me in." I moved out that same day, left half my stuff behind, didn't care. I couldn't spend another second in that house. The cops never found who it was. I showed them the paper, the video, the audio. Nothing came of it. It's been years now. I live in a city, in an apartment on the 5th floor with no balconies. All my windows have locks and bars, cameras everywhere. But some nights, I wake up around 3 a.m., heart pounding. I check the camera feeds. I listen for whispers. Sometimes when it's really quiet, I still think I hear him, tapping on the glass.